Most people who talk about healing aren't actually healing. They are performing. And here's the thing, it's a performance you can see right through. This video breaks down that illusion and offers something real instead, because there's something strange happening in wellness culture. Everyone's talking about trauma. Everyone's talking about healing. Everyone's sharing their journey of self-discovery on social media as if it's a trophy, as if healing is a public achievement, something to be validated by likes and emotional comments from strangers. But if you look closely, something doesn't quite fit. The person who speaks loudest about their therapy sessions often seems to be rehearsing a script. The person who posts about their daily spiritual practices seems more concerned with documenting the moment than with experiencing it. The person who shares their deepest revelations is doing it for an audience, not for themselves. They aren't processing their wounds. They're collecting healing badges like achievements. It's as if healing has become a curated identity, an elaborate performance where the goal isn't actually to free oneself from suffering, but to construct a persona of someone who is working on it. The enlightened person, the conscious person, the person who has done the work, and this becomes the new prison. Because when healing becomes a performance, you can never truly be healed. You need to remain wounded enough to have something to heal. You need to remain broken enough to have something to fix. The journey becomes endless, not because healing is profound, but because your ego has found a new project. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone who constantly talks about healing but never seems to change? They are always on the journey, always doing the work, always having revelations, but somehow always in the same emotional place they were 3 years ago. They've swapped the details, but the structure remains the same. 5 years ago, they chased validation through career wins. Now they chase it through spiritual breakthroughs. They swapped corporate buzzwords for therapy speak, but it's the same game underneath. Look at me, see how far I've come, tell me I'm special. And the most dangerous part is that this version of healing feels so noble. It feels like growth. It feels like self-awareness. It uses all the right vocabulary, does all the right practices, reads all the right books. But it's not healing, it's identity. You are not healing from trauma. You are becoming the person who has trauma. And that distinction is everything. Because true healing is almost invisible. It doesn't come with public announcements or dramatic status updates. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't seek validation. It simply happens in the silence of a person who has finally stopped fighting with themselves. The truly healed person doesn't talk about it because there's nothing to talk about. The wound has closed. The story has lost its power. They have moved on. But someone performing healing, they can't let go of the story. Because without it, who are they? Strip away the trauma, the journey, the transformation narrative, and what's left? Someone ordinary. And that's the real fear. And so they become addicted to the healing itself. They find new layers, new traumas, new patterns to deconstruct. Not because these patterns are actually hindering their lives, but because they need to keep the narrative alive. They need to keep the journey going. Because if the journey ends, they face something scarier than the original trauma. The reality that they're just normal, that their suffering isn't unique or special, that healing doesn't transform them into someone extraordinary. It just returns them to the normal, imperfect human state of existing without constant drama. And that thought is intolerable to the ego. So the ego gets clever and turn healing itself into the drama. Make it an endless quest. Make it an identity that's bulletproof because it's always evolving, always under construction. It's genius, really. You don't actually need to change. You just need to always be changing. You don't need to be healed. You just need to always be healing. And no one can call you fake because you're doing the work. You're being vulnerable. You're being brave. You're sharing your journey, except you're not. You're not healing from trauma. You're performing recovery for approval. And the difference between these two things is the difference between freedom and another more sophisticated prison. So why does this happen? Why do so many people get stuck in this cycle where healing never ends? It's because most people start with a broken premise. They think they're broken. They assume there's something wrong that needs fixing. So the entire healing journey becomes a mission to rebuild themselves into someone better, more complete, more enlightened. But if you start with the belief that you are broken, you can never truly be whole. Because being whole would mean that the healing has ended. And if the healing ends, what's left? Just you, imperfect, ordinary, human. And for the ego, that's not enough. The ego needs a project, needs a mission, needs something to fix, improve, transform. Hand it healing as a project and it'll never finish, because a completed project is an ego with nowhere to go. So it keeps moving the finish line. It keeps finding new problems. It keeps creating new goals. And you get stuck in an endless cycle of self-criticism disguised as self-awareness. You think you're growing, but you're just repeating the same pattern with different vocabulary. You're stacking spiritual insights the way you once stacked promotions. You're chasing gurus' approval the way you once chased your bosses. You're benchmarking yourself by therapy sessions like you used to by salary bumps. The tool has changed. The mechanism hasn't. And this is the deeper problem with modern healing culture. It never questions the core assumption. It never asks, do you actually need fixing? It just assumes you do, then offers 1,000 different paths, each one promising to keep you busy forever. Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one tells you. The reason your healing feels empty is because you're solving the wrong problem. You think you need to be fixed. But what if the real issue was believing that you are broken? You think you need to heal your trauma. But what if the real wound is the narrative you keep telling about it? You think you need to become a better version of yourself. But what if the problem was believing that the current version isn't enough? Because when you start asking these questions, something shifts. The entire dynamic of healing is inverted. You stop trying to fix yourself and start questioning the voice that told you were broken. You stop trying to heal and start questioning the need for healing. You stop trying to become someone and start dismantling the person you think you should be. And that's a completely different process. That's a process that can actually end, not because you've reached some enlightened state of perfection, but because you've finally stopped believing that you needed to. You see through the story. You see through the performance. You see through the identity built around being wounded and working to heal. And when that structure collapses, what's left isn't the healed person. It's just you. No narrative, no project, no mission to become someone else. Just existing, messy, incomplete, human. And strangely, that's more freedom than any healing journey could ever offer. But here's what no one tells you about why this happens. Why so many people build their entire identities around healing and never truly heal. Why the journey never ends. Why the narrative keeps expanding. Why every insight leads to 10 more layers that need to be worked through. There's a psychological mechanism at play here that is far more subtle than most people realize. And when you see it, everything about modern healing culture starts to make sense in an entirely different way. The reason your healing feels empty is because you're solving the wrong problem. You think you need to be fixed. But what if the real issue was believing that you are broken? Because the truth is that being real isn't about healing yourself into an ideal version. It's not about becoming perfect, balanced, or enlightened. Being real is about accepting yourself as you truly are, uncomfortable and all. And that's not marketable. It doesn't generate likes. It doesn't turn into inspirational content. So we do what humans do best: package authenticity as performance. We invent a version of being real that's palatable, shareable, Instagram-worthy, and we call it healing. But let me show you the psychological mechanism behind this, because when you understand how it works, you'll start seeing it everywhere. The reason healing becomes an ego project is very simple: fear of rejection. Think about it. From childhood, we learn that certain parts of us are acceptable and others aren't. Certain emotions are welcome, others need to be hidden. Certain vulnerabilities can be shown, others are signs of weakness. So we build masks, not from malice, but for survival. Show what's safe, hide the rest. Then as adults, we discover personal development, spirituality, therapy, finally, a place to talk about these hidden parts. But here's the trick, we don't remove the mask, we just polish it. Every healing modality you collect is another way to avoid the truth. Every workshop you attend, every practice you adopt, every insight you share, all of it can just be another layer of varnish over the same old mask, because the naked, raw, uncomfortable truth about who you are, that remains hidden. And the most perverse thing is that now you have the perfect language to justify it. I'm in process. I'm working on myself. I'm on my healing journey. All these true phrases, all these genuine intentions, and yet deep, deep down there's a silent question. If I show who I truly am, unfiltered, without context, without the narrative of my healing journey, will you still accept me? And because the answer is too frightening, we keep healing, we keep working, we keep sharing our evolution, anything less than being naked. Now let me give you a metaphor that will clarify this. Think about the difference between a mirror and a mask. The mirror shows the truth. It reflects what is there, without judgment, without editing, without narrative. You look in the mirror and you see exactly what is. The dark circles, the wrinkles, the tired expression, the imperfect skin. Everything. The mask, on the other hand, shows a performance. It presents an edited version, carefully constructed to create a specific effect. It hides what should not be seen and highlights what should be admired. And here's the insight. Most of our healing journey is about creating a better mask, not about looking in the mirror. We don't want to see the truth about ourselves. We want to create a version of ourselves that is true enough to seem authentic, but controlled enough to be safe. And we do this so well, with such psychological sophistication, that we don't even notice. Because real healing, actual transformation happens alone. In the moments nobody's watching, no audience, no validation waiting. It's the 3 a.m. silence when you're alone with your darkest thoughts and can't turn them into a philosophical story. It's the shame nobody will ever know you felt. It's the formless fear with no name, no diagnosis, no therapeutic fix. These are the deep waters, and we avoid them like poison. We prefer to stay on the surface, where we can swim in circles and call it progress. So let me give you something practical here, something you can start observing today. There's an impulse I call the performance impulse. That split second when you feel something real, have a breakthrough, experience intense emotion, and immediately plan how to share it, how you'll post about it, turn it into content, use it to prove your depth. This happens so fast you don't even catch it. Almost instantaneous. Experience, share it. But that impulse, that's not transformation. That's ego. Real transformation doesn't need witnesses, doesn't need validation, doesn't need anyone's approval but your own. When you have a breakthrough and your first thought is how to share it, stop, breathe, see this impulse for what it is. Nothing wrong with it, by the way. I'm not here to shame you. But be honest, this isn't healing. This is performance. Healing starts when you can sit with the experience without making it content, feel without explaining, change without announcing. Look at the difference. The ego says, I had an amazing insight today about my attachment patterns, time to post about it. Transformation says, I had that insight. I'm going to live with it and see what actually changes. One wants applause, the other wants truth. One performs being real, the other just is real. One needs an audience, the other happens in silence. Here's what'll sting. If you can't tell the difference in your own life, you're probably doing the first thing. All of us, everyone, has this impulse. Need to be witnessed, understood, validated. The goal isn't erasing the impulse, it's seeing it, being honest about it. Then deciding, do I perform or do I transform? Sometimes you'll pick performance, that's fine. You don't have to be perfect. Just be honest about what you're actually doing. Now, back to that feeling we talked about at the beginning, that healing feels empty. Do you know why now? Because you're healing the persona, not the person. You're polishing the mask, not looking in the mirror. You're fixing the version you show the world, not the truth hiding in silence. All those therapies retreats. Books, if it's to build a better self to display. It stays empty. Performance, no matter how polished, never fills the hunger for authenticity. You can craft the perfect mask, beautifully sculpted, psychologically complex, but alone at night. You know what it is. And that knowledge eats away. So here's the question that's going to sit with you. If healing is the mask, what's underneath? What does being real actually look like? No performance, no narrative, no need for approval. Can you face that without looking away? Because being real isn't comfortable, not shareable, generates no recognition. That's the whole point. Real authenticity doesn't ask permission, doesn't seek approval, doesn't explain itself. It just exists. But what does that actually look like? How do you live it without making it another spiritual thing? When you remove the mask, what's there isn't pretty, isn't enlightened. It's messy, contradictory, raw, human. And that's exactly what makes it real. Here's the twist nobody wants to hear. You're not broken, never were. The only lie was believing you needed healing. Real healing isn't self-improvement. It's surrendering to who you already are. And that brings us to the only real alternative to all this. Just being. Being real means accepting yourself without turning acceptance into another project. Sitting with your darkness without making it spiritual. Stopping the cataloging of flaws as traumas to heal and just letting them be. Most people can't handle this. Being real is deeply uncomfortable. No validation, no likes, no "you're so brave" comments. Just you, alone with the unfiltered truth of who you are. No story, no audience. Here's the paradox. You only change when you stop trying to change. When you're constantly working on yourself, you're operating from the belief that something's broken. That belief becomes reality. You create the problem you're trying to fix. But when you just exist, when you stop fixing and optimizing and transcending, something shifts. You naturally change, not from effort, but from finally surrendering. It's like trying to fall asleep. Push harder and you stay awake. Stop trying and sleep comes. Same with transformation. It arrives the moment you stop chasing. And that's where solitude becomes your greatest tool. In solitude, no one's watching, just you and reality. The solitude mirror doesn't lie, doesn't give likes, doesn't validate. It reflects what's actually there. When you look without needing to fix what you see, something breaks. You stop using healing as your identity. Pain stops being currency. Performance becomes unnecessary. And in that quiet, that complete absence of witness, you find something shocking. You're okay. Not perfect, not enlightened, but fundamentally fine. You're probably thinking, sounds nice, but how do I actually live this? That's the right question, because ideas without action are just intellectual exercises. Here's the most practical tool: micro-moment control. Every time you feel the urge to share your healing, your journey, your breakthrough, stop. 1 second. Notice the impulse. Sit with it without acting. Ask, am I sharing this because it's real or because I need validation? Answer honestly. If it's validation, stay silent. Choose the quiet. Choose not to perform. What happens next? It'll hurt. You won't get the dopamine hit. You won't get support. You'll be alone with the feeling you were trying to process through sharing. That discomfort, that's where real transformation happens. Not in your post, not in the therapy session you broadcast, not in the retreat-turned content. It's in that gap between, I want to share this, and choosing silence. That gap, That moment of real choice is where actual change lives, where you break the cycle, where you stop feeding ego and start feeding truth. And when you do this repeatedly, when you pick authenticity over performance over and over, something shifts. You attract different people. Not those who need your brokenness to feel better about themselves, not those who need your healing to justify theirs, but those who can just be with you as you are, no narrative required. The mirror principle in pure form. Stop performing healing and you stop attracting people who need you healed. Accept your mess without narrating it. You attract people who accept theirs. Stop seeking validation and you stop attracting people who validate. The real attracts the real. The false attracts the false. This is your indicator. Look at who's around you. Look at your relationships. If everyone relates to you as the one healing or the one healed, you're performing. If people only connect through your journey, you've built an identity on it. But if you have people who show up on your bad days, in the unphotogenic moments, in your normal contradictions, and they stay anyway, that's authentic territory. And here's what'll set you free. You don't need healing to be loved. Don't need enlightenment to matter. Don't need resolved trauma to deserve connection. You can just be human, messy, contradictory, still becoming, and that's always been enough. False healing promises. Fix yourself, optimize yourself, transcend yourself, then you're worthy. The truth, you're already worthy. Healing doesn't add anything. It just removes the lie that something was missing. When you really understand this, in your bones, the need to perform vanishes. Nothing to prove, nothing to fix. Just the quiet work of being alive and aware. So take this one thing from this video. Stop trying to heal yourself, not because healing's wrong, because the perform version keeps you trapped. Sit with your pain without monetizing it. Work through your trauma without making it your brand. Do therapy, meditate, whatever, but do it privately. No audience, no validation hunt. In that silence, that total absence of performance, you might finally find what was always there, you, whole, exactly as you are. You're not broken, never were. The only lie was needing to be healed. When you really get this, feel it deep. The need to perform just dissolves. What's left is simpler, quieter, more real. What's left is you, and you've always been enough. If this landed, you already know what to do. But here's my ask. Don't turn this into another performance. Don't post about how I'm stopping healing performance. Just stop quietly for yourself. If you want to comment, ask yourself, what healing ritual am I ready to drop? What mask do I want to remove? Not for approval, just for truth. Because maybe the realest thing we can do is say, we don't need healing. We need acceptance of who we actually are, messy, contradictory, human. And that's the only real transformation, not what you broadcast, what you live, silently, alone, real. Thanks for watching. If this hit, you know what to do. Want to dig deeper into authenticity versus performance? There's a video